Welcome back. Let's continue then with our coverage of the story. The Southern Africa Telecommunications Networks and Applications Conference officially underway at Skukuza Safari Lodge and Game Drive. Communications and Digital Technologies Minister, that's Malatsi, has just addressed that annual event. The gathering is a leading ICT conference where industry, academia and operators publish matters concerning progress achieved in applied research in the information and technologies communications sector, and where they share views on the latest trends and developments. Watching those developments is our colleague NOMPUMELELO SIZIBA, who joins us now live from the venue itself. And I suppose a more philosophical question, Nompu, to ask here is whether technology is a blessing or a curse. I imagine, though, the minister spoke to a whole lot more pragmatic matters around this issue.
Thanks very much, Ayanda. Indeed, AI is said to be, artificial intelligence is said to be definitely a blessing for now and for the future, with collective efforts among industrial players and academics and society at large. And definitely there are some negatives around it, which the minister did allude to and talked about. Given the fact that we are a democratic society, we would want to guard against the negatives of AI. But without any further ado, let me bring him into the conversation. Mr. Malatsi, he is, of course, as you've mentioned, the Minister of Communications and Digital Technology. Sir, thank you so much for joining us. You spoke quite eloquently at the conference, speaking about the importance of inclusion, digital inclusion, particularly in a society like ours.
Yes, absolutely. Look, I think while it is important to recognize the impact that AI is making on our daily life, we have to underscore the fact that there are already concerns about its unethical use. So every discussion, in order to be honest about its full use, has to always underscore the things about protection of privacy, the protection of human rights, the fight against misinformation and disinformation that finds itself often embedded in the manipulation of AI. But there's a lot of potential in it that we've already seen that is, transforming lives, transforming institutions and organizations, about increasing efficiency and just unlocking the power of technology. And for us, as a country that is still battling with digital exclusion, we have to be mindful of catching up with advances that have been made into technology, but keeping our mind on the fact that there are still over 30% of the population of the country that do not have access to connectivity. And that's the fight that we are obsessed with.
Now, one of the things that came up, or it's actually a core of the conference, is really applying AI into things like education, health, and our general living. How do you see this playing out, particularly for viewers at home who kind of feel, oh, this is all gobbledygook, they're talking AI, what does this mean? How do you see this practically impacting people in South Africa, in the education space, learning space, etc.?
Look, I think the most immediate impact would be in making accessibility of learning much more simpler and much more accessible, but also about efficiency, But again, you raise a very fundamental point. For the many poor South Africans who are in rural areas, when you speak AI, you've already left them far behind because their immediate thing is about accessibility. And then we can start speaking about digital literacy, because it is only when you've got those, the literacy, you can be digitally fluent to be able to be aware and knowledgeable enough of what opportunities does AI bring, into your sector. And I think that's where we need to quickly catch up with the rest of the world, so that we know that in technology things evolve and happen very fast, right? So while we are battling to catch up with global standards on connectivity, AI is already changing lives in many parts of the country, and we need to also prepare for that future. So in the education sector, it's very key that even the curriculum, the packaging of the curriculum reflects the technological needs, not only of today, but of the future, so that we are better prepared for what lies ahead.
One of the things that you touched on, which was quite important, and it really sits with you, although you've just been in the seat a few months, is the issue of the regulatory environment and policy certainty. how are you going to go about ensuring that there's more policy certainty in this arena so that people can invest in the area?
Yeah, it's absolutely an important point. One of the things the president keeps underscoring whenever he speaks to us as ministers is we need to approach regulation with our eyes on the ball of how do we make it an enabler for inclusive growth and job creation. You know, there is no doubt that if you speak to everyone in this sector, the one thing that they keep pointing to is, you know, policy uncertainty. I think unintentionally, even some, you know, regulations and pieces of legislation that are in place have contradictions or ambiguity, and it's something that we'll be spending a lot of time investing resources on, also doing stakeholder engagement on, because it has to be an inclusive process, because we make legislation to try and make the sector thrive, not to suffocate it. So the feedback from the sector is very, very important, because we want policies that can help make this sector grow and ultimately attract the investment that our country needs, so that we can have people having jobs, and most importantly have South Africans connected reliably, so that nobody is excluded.
And one last thing, Minister. Of course, we had a speaker just now, Professor, talking about how it's important for us not to just use AI technologies that have been applied by people from overseas. We must do it ourselves. Do we have the capacity in South Africa and the broader African continent to do this? And even if we have the capacity, what about the funds? Because with development, you always need money, and sometimes the private sector will not always be there. So how can government be involved? Can you only be involved insofar as making the regulatory environment conducive?
Look, I don't think it's actually that expensive to do it, because when you look in terms of some of the leading voices globally, they come from South Africa. I mean, individuals like Professor Chilidzi Marwala, for instance, is one of the leading voices on AI. Professor Skukuza at the University of Pretoria is one of the reference point for many of the work that happens in AI. I think what we need to do is, one, invest resources in attracting younger skills and younger people into embracing these trends and making sure that they are well funded to be specialists, but also most importantly invest in upskilling the public service so that they can embrace these technologies to help government deliver services better and responsive, to be more responsive and be more efficient.
Thank you, sir, for speaking to us. That was the Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, Malatsi, just giving us his overview of some of the issues that are being discussed here at the SATNAC conference. Of course, industrialists, academics, and other people from other disciplines are here to thresh out some of the trends that are taking place in ICT, and also trying to find solutions for modern day problems, especially African problems. Ayanda, it's back to you.
What a fascinating set of discussions. NOMPUMELELO SIZIBA, thanks very much indeed. Nompu's left to us there from Skukuza in Mpumalanga.